Circe Olson Woessner, the director of the Museum of the American Military Family in Tijeras, New Mexico, and this is our podcast, At Ease. I'm speaking with Army spouse Arin Yoon, who is in Kansas. Hi, Arin. How are you?
Hi, good. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Hey, it's good to talk to you too. Before we go too much further, I wanted also to add that you're a photographer and an artist. Did I read somewhere that you're also an educator?
Yes, so I've been working as a teaching artist and teaching usually underserved youth photography and video in New York, in Los Angeles, and also in Grenada, which is in the Caribbean on a small island called Carriacou.
Oh. We may have to go visit what you were doing there in Grenada. But let's talk about two of the projects you're working on right now that are really relevant to the military family. So what are you working on these days?
So I'm working on a project called To Be at War, which started basically as a visual diary when I became a military spouse for the first time. Mm-hmm. So growing up, I didn't really know anyone in the military, so I didn't really know what military culture was all about. Mm-hmm. And I was living in LA, and I moved from LA to Fort Irwin, California, which I don't know if you know Fort Irwin, but it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. So It was definitely a culture shock to go from LA, like a big city, to the middle of the desert in the middle of all these like military exercises.
Yeah, no doubt.
So it started out as a visual diary, and then it just turned into a documentary project in which I was documenting my friends and, community, especially right before they PCS, to kind of like preserve these friendships. Mm. And then recently I got a grant from an organization called We Women, and with that grant money, I'm able to expand it to become a community photography project. So that project is 3 parts. The first part is workshops for military spouses and children, in which I teach them the basics of photography, and they kind of make a document of their everyday lives, of what Army life is like or military life is like. And the second part is a public art exhibition in Leavenworth. And the third part is a kind of social media and web component with an interactive website, and that'll be down the line.
Oh, sounds very interesting. Well, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to go into a little bit more of that later, but you said you didn't come from a military background, so we all would like to know, I'm sure our listeners would too. Where did you and your husband meet, and then how long have you been married?
So we've been married for 7 years. We actually met in New York City. At that time I was living in New Jersey and working in New York. And I was actually going out to meet my friend Adrian, who had been just deployed to Afghanistan. And he had been a company commander there, and he was coming back, and it was just kind of like a, welcome home night out with all his friends. But it was also commander's night out for them. They had just gone to Afghanistan. It was 2011. And all the company commanders, while they were over there, they said, when we get back to, Fort Drum, we'll go into the city. We'll have like a nice steak dinner. We'll go out, and just let some, just like let loose and let some steam off. And actually, Adrian was profiled by the New York Times. The New York Times followed their battalion for their At War blog at the time. So they all got to visit the New York Times building and got a tour, and then they went out to dinner. And then it was that night that I met John, my husband. But, I didn't think really anything of it because he lived at Fort Drum. I lived in New Jersey, and he was PCSing to Fort Irwin. But then later that summer, I was actually spending the summer in Carriacou on that island in Grenada, teaching the kids photography and developing the media program there. And John called me when I was in Grenada, and he said, hey, I have 2 weeks block leave. I would love to come see you. And I said, well, I'm working, so if you come down here, actually, we don't have a fitness director for the kids. Could you come and be the fitness director for the kids? And so he flew down, and he worked his whole block leave, and he was really great with the kids, and, we kind of like fell in love, I guess, while he was there. So then after we got back to our respective places, him to Fort Irwin, me back to New Jersey, New York, we just did long distance, and eventually I moved to LA and got a job as a teaching artist there at a nonprofit until we got married, and then that's when I moved to Fort Irwin.
Well, that is so romantic and really cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks.
so listen. I was thinking that you know, being an artist and working art photographer, I imagine there was a little culture shock once you married into the military. Did you have a military wedding or?
Well, John was in his uniform and his blues, but no, that was about it, the extent of, and he had, a lot of his, military buddies there.
Right.
But that was about it.
So what was the hardest thing for you, or the most confusing thing about suddenly being a military wife?
Well, I guess just being like a documentary photographer, it was actually really interesting to move to Fort Irwin from LA. Just, the desert landscape is really picturesque. And it was just really cool. I had never been around like ACUs before or, any of this combat gear. I'd be riding my bike in the desert and then all of a sudden like a military convoy would drive by and I really felt like I was on a movie set. So it was just really fascinating for me. It wasn't a hard transition because I was like just so into like, experiencing this new culture and documenting it. But later on, after like the novelty of military culture wore off, that's when I realized how hard it could be when I had two young children and my husband was deployed and I was all by myself and I was away from family, moving again. Like those are the moments I'm like, okay, wow, it's very difficult and not what the average civilian family goes through.
Right. So in an article that I saw about your project, and I posted it on the museum Facebook page, you mentioned, and you just did again, you mentioned about taking pictures of your domestic space and military objects. So what kind of things were you photographing when you started to document this new military life? What were the military objects that you decided to photograph and why those?
It was just everything was so new to me, so it was interesting. Like even someone in a uniform was really interesting. And my neighbor would dry his ACUs out in the sun, and I took a picture of that through a peephole on the fence. And like my husband brought home night vision goggles, and I just thought that was the coolest thing. And I was taking pictures through the night vision goggles, and I actually ended up making a self-portrait through the night vision goggles. But everything that John basically just had at home, like because he was going out in the field every 2 weeks. So he had everything like radios and bulletproof vests and, the helmets and all this protective equipment and magazines. It just felt like I felt like there was a sense of danger and risk and, it just felt like very exciting for me. So those are I just kind of took pictures of everything.
Okay. So you were talking about your project, the Leavenworth Community Project, and it's a 3-part thing with workshops and then, that. So you were teaching these photography workshops in person, but now with the pandemic, I'm sure that's been put on hold. But what kind of workshops were they? Were they mostly technical, like how to use a camera or composition, how to set up the good shots, or was it a combination or thematic?
So there was, I had 3 workshops for the spouses so far, and they were mostly technical and composition and lighting. We did like natural lighting with a reflector. We did studio lighting, and, I taught composition, and a lot of the spouses are interested in, learning how to use their SLR digital cameras better. So I showed them how to do the aperture priority setting, the shutter priority, and, eventually hoping to get to be able to use the manual setting. Because when you can use the manual setting, you have so much more control over, how your image comes out. And with the kids, I only had 1 workshop with the kids, but yeah, we did composition, and we talked about how military brats are portrayed in the media.
Yeah, okay. Well, and that'll segue right into this next question then. So I've been on your community photography project Facebook page, and I saw that you have asked people to upload photos based on themes, and so I was going to ask you, what are some of your themes that the listeners might want to know about?
So some of the themes I've had so far is, social distancing, right? When the pandemic cause people to have to social distance all of a sudden. Like, how are you guys social distancing around post? Another one was, what's a visual meditation, which is something in nature that's kind of calming, or something around your house that you noticed in a new light now that you're homebound a lot more. The most popular assignment was celebrate military children, like post a photo of your kids and what they're doing, and how are you celebrating them.
So are you coming up with the themes yourself, or are people in your classes, your remote classes now, I guess, suggesting, or?
No, I'm coming up with them, just kind of depending on what's going on, kind of with the status of, COVID right now. And what's, like, this was also the month of the military child, so I wanted to do something around, like, military children this month. So just kind of depending on what's going on.
Okay. Well, May is Military Family Appreciation Month and Memorial Day, so you'll have more themes and richness for that month.
Yes, definitely.
I think I saw somewhere that and you said that there's going to be an art show later on in Leavenworth. So in the fall you plan to print out the photos and frame them? How are you going to do that? What are you going to do?
So they'll be displayed at Leavenworth Landing, which is a public park right outside of Fort Leavenworth in the town of Leavenworth. So the park is right along the Missouri River, which separates Kansas and Missouri. So it's like a border. And there's a narrow strip of pathway just along the river. And on each side of the path, where people walk, they walk their dogs, go on walks there, take pictures. There's a fence on both sides of the path. So on one side, I'm going to install photos of soldiers in uniform, like life-size. So it looks like they're protecting the border. Wow. And on the other side of the path, I'm going to install photos created in the workshops by the spouses and the kids of kind of everyday military life. So when you walk in, you see, the soldiers, they're working, they're protecting the border. On the other side, you see life going on as usual with the military families. So I hope to get, the viewers will get not only a sense of the physical separation, but also like the emotional and psychological. And I hope the viewers will go up close to the work and just kind of examine it and take a good look and just, I guess I wanted to start a conversation about what military families go through, and just for civilians to be able to just openly ask questions. Because I feel like a lot of the time civilians don't feel comfortable talking to service members or military about their experiences because, they don't want to touch on a, touchy subject. Right. But I think people in the military want to talk about their experiences, and they want to have their, what their life is like portrayed in the media.
Well, and their stories told. We have been trying very hard to get a lot of the World War II era spouses' stories down before they're gone, and Korean War too.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So my mind just thought of something. So you're going to do these life-size pictures. Did you get grant money to pay for that? I mean, that would be outrageously expensive to...
Yeah, it's going to be on, like, banner material, like the vinyl banner. And they'll be zip tied to the fence. So it's not like, fine art paper framed and, mounted. It's more casual. It's a public art exhibition. Okay. So yeah, the grant money will cover that. And I also got grants from the city of Leavenworth, the Bureau of Tourism, for the project, as well as a small grant from the National Military Family Association for it.
Well, very cool. So what plans do you have after the initial exhibit? Are you just going to leave it in Leavenworth, or is it going to travel? Does it need a home?
So I received the grant from, as I mentioned, a nonprofit organization called We Women. And they're working with artists, women or women identifying artists from all over the country, working on important social issues of our time through photography. And through community engagement. So with these other artists, we'll be part of a traveling exhibition all around the country. It was supposed to start in the fall, but with the current pandemic, it'll probably get pushed into the spring. Right. And that'll travel for around a year. And then after that, I don't have particular plans for the work.
Okay, well, keep the museum in mind if you are looking later on. I sure will. So I was on your To Be at War webpage. I think it was a web page. But I was drawn to a couple of things. You did some work on comfort women, and also for a museum, I guess it's in Korea, on sexual slavery. So tell us about those projects and the people you met in those projects, and why did you want to talk about that subject?
So I'm Korean American, and the issue of the comfort woman is really important for Koreans because during World War II, young women and sometimes even girls were recruited, quote unquote, to work in factories or, basically lured with a false premise of jobs abroad. But they were put into these comfort stations and made into sex slaves for the Japanese Imperial Army. And sometimes they were just kidnapped. And then it wasn't until 1991 when the first comfort woman came forward and said, this is what happened to me. And, these comfort stations existed. And then after that, it was kind of like the Me Too movement. Like all these women came forward. It was like the floodgates opened and, everyone started giving their testimonies. So, and then there was historical evidence of this happening, that it happened. But the Japanese government failed to provide a formal apology or give legal reparations to the comfort women. And that's a word that they don't use. We don't really use it. That's why it's in quotes, because it's a euphemism created by the Japanese military. But we call them 할머니, which means grandmother in Korean. It's a term of endearment. But yeah, they've been protesting in front of the Japanese embassy in Seoul since 1992, every Wednesday. It's the longest running protest in history. So, I guess as a Korean American, I just wanted to get in touch with my roots and my history and use my photography to promote their activism. And also, I was involved with the first Comfort Women, quote unquote, memorial. That was made in New Jersey. So, yeah, just because of my involvement with the memorial, too. And so, yeah, it's a really important issue because it sets a historical precedent. If, these kinds of things are happening in war, women are being, made into sex slaves, and it's not acknowledged, then it sets a bad precedent, for the future generations.
So how did you meet some of the women? Because you did photos of some women and did some, interviewing. How did you find these women?
They actually, a lot of the women live at a residence just in Gwangju, which is, I think about an hour and a half outside of Seoul. But they live at a residence there. And so I had to contact their residence. It's called the House of Sharing, and I had to get permission from them to photograph. So I went there and I, lived there for, not lived there, stayed there for a few days and made the pictures.
So is the Museum of Sexual Slavery in the same town, and is it about the comfort women, or is it about more than just the comfort women?
Yes, it's there at the House of Sharing, and I know they're renovating it now to make it bigger, but yeah, it's about their experiences there.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I think it's good that you are documenting it and bringing this forward, and that the women are speaking up and protesting.
They have been for a very long time now.
Yeah. So moving a little closer to home, you have this Leavenworth Community Photo Project, but I thought I read somewhere that it's open to more than just people from Leavenworth now?
Yeah, so the workshops and the exhibition will be mostly focused on, residents at Fort Leavenworth, because that's where the workshops are and that's where the project is based. That's where I'm based. But the third component, the social media and website component, will be open to anyone in the military. So, military spouses, military children, even retirees. I want their stories to be told. What is it like to transition out of, the military into civilian life? And if I'm also collecting snapshots from war by soldiers. So it'll have like several different components. And it's basically will serve as an archive to what it's like to be at war at this time in history, basically. Okay,
so let me finish this thought. So you can take pictures from people from all over. So what are the parameters? It has to be a JPEG or a PNG, and is there a deadline? And how do they get the pictures to you? So we'll start with that.
So you can follow along with my assignments on Facebook and just like our page. It's the handle is @tobeatwar, and it's called the Fort Leavenworth Community Photography Project. And you can also follow us on Instagram. Again, same handle @tobeatwar, and you can hashtag us #tobeatwar. And you can just post your photos in the assignment, the comment section of the assignments, or hashtag us. Later, I'm going to have a website called @tobeatwar. And you can also email me your images, or if you have a story to tell, or something else you want to share.
Okay.
And my email address is Arin Yoon, ARINYOON @gmail.com.
Okay, cool. So I imagine there are people who are listening there who are wondering why the heck I haven't asked you what kind of camera you use. If you use a Nikon or a Canon, so I better find that out for them. Yeah.
Actually, a lot of my work I shoot with a film camera. It's a medium format film camera called the Mamiya 7 II. I've been using that since 2003, and I scan the negatives or have the negatives scanned and output digitally. My digital camera that I'm using is a Canon 5D Mark II, and I just ordered, it's a mirrorless camera called the Fuji X-T4, which is becoming more and more popular among photography professionals, but it doesn't have all those mirrors inside, so it's a lot lighter, and I have 2 young children, so sometimes I can't carry around all their stuff and all my camera stuff, so it'll be nice to be able to have a lighter camera that's high functioning with all the functions, the manual functions, just in my bag at all times.
So why do you still use film camera?
Well, I feel like with film, the quality is different. It's grain instead of pixels, and it's just, I feel like I just take more time when I use a film camera because I have to set it up, and I have to light meter, and the film costs about $8 a roll, and then to get it developed is another like $13. So basically you're paying $20 for 12 images. So, I feel like when you have a digital camera, especially your cell phone, you can take 20 mindless photos within a few seconds, but there's not a lot of thought into it, But with the film camera, it's like you really think about the composition, and you think about the light, and you spend time, more time with your subject. So it just it's like slowing things down for me.
Well, that's interesting because I have often thought that digital pictures look flatter than film pictures, but I didn't know why, because I'm not a photographer. I take tons of pictures, but I have no clue. And grain, I guess, is what you're talking about, instead of pixels.
Yeah, grain, and also I think it's like the energy that you put into it, and like when you look at old photos, like from my childhood, they're all film, and it just has a different aesthetic quality to it than digital. Okay,
well, good. I feel good that I recognize that, but I wasn't sure why. So are you planning to do any projects specifically documenting the pandemic, or in your photography Facebook group, are you going to start adding more and more assignments towards the pandemic just to document this time in history, or?
I definitely want people to be able to kind of, record what's going on, especially coming from, the military family perspective. And I want the social media pages to be an outlet for, creative self-expression. So, people are basically welcome to upload anything at any time. And I have been gearing the assignments towards, what's going on with the pandemic, with like the visual meditations and the social distancing. And personally, I've been just taking more photos of my kids, I guess, and just noticing the little nuances of light around the house, and my domestic space more I've been paying attention to. And actually I've been feeling a lot more creative during this time, which is unexpected, but great. And I've also been taking pictures of my neighbors. For example, one of my neighbors, Penelope and Calvin, they're 8 and 6, and they both sew, and they've been making masks for the delivery people, for a nursing home, for some of the soldiers. working on the efforts, COVID efforts. So I took some portraits of them. So I've been taking some pictures of people in my neighborhood, like kind of helping each other out during the pandemic.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm very impressed. I just ordered my first sewing machine in a million years, and so I'm joining the mask making. But it's so nice to see people in this horrible time reaching out to help other people selflessly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like what my project was about, was like, basically the war effort is like the burden of it has been falling on military families, because, it's not like World War II where it was like a nationwide effort to, be at war. Right now, it's the civilian military divide is greater than it ever has been before, and it's really an insular community. So, but I feel like with the pandemic, it's like everything is, turned upside down. Like I feel like people kind of know what it's like to be in an effort, like together as a community, collaborating to, for a cause.
Right.
Which is what military families kind of, that's what they always are doing, So, I mean, I found that aspect of the pandemic really interesting and really awesome that people are coming together for it.
Well, so we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask you, I know you gave those handles and hashtags and all of that, but give us, again, and your website address and your social media accounts and all that so that people can follow you, find you. So go ahead and...
Sure, yeah. So my personal website is arinyoon.com, and my personal Instagram is @ArinYoon, and all the To Be at War stuff is just @To Be at War. So it's Facebook @To Be at or / To Be at War, Instagram @To Be at War, and the website will be tobeatwar.com.
Well, great. I hope that you get a lot of people who have heard about your projects now, and I hope you get a lot of pictures and a lot of stories and things like that. I wanted to once again say that this has been Circe Olson Woessner. I'm the director of the Museum of the American Military Family, and I have been speaking with Arin Yoon, Army wife, and it's been a very nice pleasure talking with you today, and definitely I'm going to keep following you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for a great conversation. And
good luck.
I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.